Okay, the next shortcut we're going to learn about is angle, angle, side. So we're going to have two pairs of corresponding angles that are congruent and one pair of corresponding sides. So if I knew angle A was congruent to angle D and angle B was congruent to angle E, I need a pair of sides that are congruent. So I don't want to use AB and ED because that would make it angle, side, angle. I want it to be angle, angle, side. So I need to know that BC is congruent to EF. Angle, angle, side. Or, this one's special. Don't mind that dog, it's my friend's dog. I wish I had a dog. I don't have a dog. Or I could do angle, angle, side this way. So if I knew that AC was congruent to DF, that would work as well. So it can go angle, angle, side, or like we had earlier, angle, angle, side this way. But if I have two pairs of corresponding angles, one pair of corresponding sides, not the included side, one of the other sides, you can use angle, angle, side as your shortcut and say that the two triangles are congruent to each other. That's enough info. The next one is, well, before we talk about the next one, I'm going to talk about the ones that you're not allowed to use. So the ones that you're not allowed to use are angle, angle, angle. So the way I remember it is angle, 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 no, no, no. Angle, 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 no, no, no. This is bad, and the reason this is not true is just because two triangles have the same angle measures, it doesn't mean that they're congruent to each other. And a perfect example would be an equilateral triangle. So we know in an equilateral triangle that all three angles are 60 degrees. So here's an equilateral triangle, and let's say all of its sides are 5. Well, we have big equilateral triangles and we have small equilateral triangles. Here's a big equilateral triangle. All of the angles are still 60 degrees. All of their measures are 60 degrees. But this guy, let's say its sides are 15. This blue equilateral triangle is really tiny. This pink equilateral triangle is gigantic. Even though they have 3 pairs of corresponding sides that are all congruent to each other, these triangles are clearly not congruent to each other. This one is way smaller than this big guy. So angle, angle, angle is no, like off limits. Angle, 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 no, no, no. You cannot use angle, angle, angle to prove that two triangles are congruent, because here's a counterexample. They have 3 congruent angles, 3 pairs of congruent angles, but they are definitely not congruent triangles. The other one, and this is going to be a distressing moment for me, we don't cuss in geometry. This is the only time that you are allowed to use this cuss word in geometry, and it's off limits. You can't use it. Angle, side, side. Ah! I can't even write it on my screen. It just burns my eyes. It's such a bad word. You can't cuss in geometry. ASS. Ah! You're not allowed to use ASS. You cannot use angle, side, side to prove that two triangles are congruent to each other. And the reason is I can swing this third side in. I'm going to include a link to a video, another video, outside video that explains this a little bit better. I can basically take this third side right here and swing it in like this and create 2 triangles. So I have this like big triangle right here, and then I can have this little triangle right here. And they have a pair of corresponding sides, or sorry, 2 pairs of corresponding sides and 1 pair of corresponding angles that are congruent, but these triangles are definitely not congruent. So ASS is a bad word. Don't cuss in geometry. You're going to make Miss Frisco cry. Just don't use ASS. Even backwards, SSA is still a bad word. Like, oh my gosh, it's still, I just can't handle it. So no cussing in geometry. ASS is off limits. Except the one special case is when you have a right triangle. When you have two right triangles. You can use ASS in right triangles. I know one pair of legs, and if I know the hypotenuse. One pair of legs are congruent and the hypotenuses are congruent. Then you can say that these two triangles are congruent. So even though it's angle side side, ASS, and ASS is bad, we're not allowed to use that one as one of our shortcuts, it's special in a right triangle, and we call it HL. Hypotenuse leg. H stands for hypotenuse, and remember the hypotenuse is the side on a right triangle that's across from the right angle. So the hypotenuse is the longest side. So if we know our hypotenuses are congruent, and if we know one pair of legs are congruent in a right triangle, we can say that they're congruent to each other. And the reason is, you probably don't remember this, but from Algebra 1, we learned this thing called the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you know two sides of a right triangle, you can find the third side by using Pythagorean theorem. So if it's a right triangle, it's a special situation, and if you know one pair of legs and then the hypotenuses are congruent, that's enough to say that the triangles are congruent. But some people like to use hypotenuse leg on every right triangle that they see. They're like, it's a right triangle, it's hypotenuse leg. No, think about it. Look at the picture. Just because it's a right triangle doesn't mean that you're going to use hypotenuse leg. Here's an example. These two triangles are not congruent by hypotenuse leg. We don't even know that the hypotenuses are congruent. They don't even have tick marks on them. This is side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. These two triangles, even though they're right triangles, are not congruent by hypotenuse leg. They're congruent by side, angle, side. Bless you, there we go. Side, angle, side. Another example is something like this. These are right triangles. They're not congruent by hypotenuse leg. They're congruent by angle, side, angle. Angle, side, angle. So you can use the other shortcuts on right triangles. You just can't use ASS unless it's a right triangle. So in conclusion, the 5 shortcuts that we are allowed to use to prove two triangles are congruent are side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, and hypotenuse leg. Those are all yeses, yay! And the ones that are no way, Jose, don't you dare use them, not allowed, is angle, 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 no, 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 angle, 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 no, 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 and then the bad word, ah!